Pretty good dive started off the competition. Could have seen a little bit more pop and extension through the arm stand, but that's a good start for the day. Waiting on Judge 6 to give a score.
As we're waiting here for the judges, you'll notice some of the divers are going to dive from 10 meters. Some of them will be 7, some on 5. Scores there, 59.4.
Noah Garcia from Stanford, starting off with the front 2.5 somersault pike on 5-meter platform. Pretty good marks from the judges. Could have seen a little bit more pop off the platform. He came in leaning just slightly forward. He wants to come in behind about 3 degrees from vertical. Here's Christian Ipsen, your 1 and 3 meter champion, from 7 meter doing front 3.5 somersault tuck.
Yeah, that may be the first time I've seen Christian compete a platform dive. He's always on the springboard, but that was very well done, front 3.5. Can't complain about 9s and 8.5s.
Excellent start to his day here. From 10 meter, Devin Burnett from SMU, front 3.5 somersault pike. Now, if you'll notice, Devin moving a little bit slower than Christian. Didn't quite get his arms up and ready for the throw. A little bit delayed on his throw, so it was traveling a little bit down. Didn't have a nice arc or trajectory to his dive there. Ryan Hawkins from Virginia Tech, front 3.5 somersault pike. Pretty nice dive from Ryan. Slightly in front of balance. Excellent pop off the platform. Moving very, very well.
69 even. Tom, 107.
Tom Newbacher from Florida State. Front 3.5 somersault pike from 10 meter. Pretty nice dive from Tom. I actually had the luxury of talking to his older brother earlier. Both he and I have been able to see his growth as a competitor over the past few years. It's really exciting to watch. Here's Jordan Lesser from Minnesota, front 3.5 somersault pike from 10 meter. Pretty nice dive from Jordan, just leaning a little bit. I haven't seen a diver yet get a nice extension in their hip line off the start. Everybody's been a little bit crouched on the start, so it's not a pop that I'd like to see off the platform. A little bit more hip extension, open angle in the hip, a little bit more drive into the knees. Here's Logan Schinholzer from Virginia Tech, front 3.5 somersault pike. Out just a little bit too early on the check. He's got to wait just a little bit longer, check and lift the hips to be able to get that in up and down. John Fox from Kentucky doing a reverse 2.5 somersault tuck. Now John's a lengthier diver, so his lines are quite extraordinary. You'll notice that his degree of difficulty today is a little bit lower than everybody else, but hopefully he'll be able to make up for that with his pretty decent entry right there. Yeah, pretty decent entry right there. You'll see some better ones from John later on today. His first dive of the event, so he's got a little bit of a case of the nerves, but starts off his day pretty well there. Greg Ferrucci from Kentucky, back 2.5 somersault, 1.5 twist pike in the pike position.
And that's the dive that Greg hurt his thumb on back in January. He does a very good job getting up into the air. See him finish the dive fairly high, lined up. He's going to come around with 1.9 on the board there, 8.5.
Harry Jones from Arizona State, inward 3.5 somersaults huck. Now, something that's interesting about Harrison, he's actually done another flip in this direction before. He was the first person in the world to do it, and it was the hardest dive at the time. Nobody's competed a dive harder than the one you're seeing right now with an additional flip. Harry does a pretty good job there. A little bit heavy on the entry.
A little heavy. He's a little high up in the air. You can see why he has time for another somersault, and he didn't even spin that one as fast as we saw him spinning yesterday off the springboard. He'll do 4.5 somersaults in the forward direction in the next round.
Here's Ahmad from Indiana, front 3.5 somersault pike.
Now, Ahmad seems to be leaning a little bit forward there as he takes off. See the dive just rotating out away from the platform. Comes out a lot early. Needs to sit back, get his shoulders behind his heels as he jumps off the tower, and it'll pop up off the tower a little bit more.
Here's JB from Virginia, back 2.5 twister from 5 meter. Does a pretty decent job with it. Was leaning a little back, shoulders led through that. Could see a little bit more extension up, standing the line. Fingertips could have led through the top. His shoulders were the first thing to leave the vertical plane from the platform. Here's Kyle Butts from Virginia Tech, front 3.5 somersault pike.
Leaves that one just a little bit short. You see his shoulders ahead of him as he leaves the tower. Really needs to pop up off the tower, kind of almost trip, we call it, when you get to the end there. Comes away with 5.5. Nick McCrory, 52-55, front 2.5 somersaults, 2.5 twist pike. I'm sorry, that's back 2.5 somersaults, 2.5 twist pike.
Nick was an Olympic team member for us this year in 10-meter individual and 10-meter synchro with partner David Bediah from Purdue. Now, if you'll notice, Nick's got a much deeper squat than anybody else. Nick's actually battled with knee injuries in the past. Didn't quite get a full extension off the platform there. Didn't quite get all the way out of his squat. Just left it a tiny bit short. We'll see that much better in finals there. But Nick's also known for his great entries, as you just saw.
Yeah, you could almost feel that entry as it hit the water.
Here's Clark Thomas from Missouri, front 3.5 somersault pike. Now, if you'll notice, every diver that we've seen so far for fronts has actually measured off their steps. It's just to make sure that they're starting from the same position every time. You definitely don't want any miscalculations when you're up that high.
David does a better job getting off the tower. He's got flat feet as he's spinning through there. And you see him just miss the out as he comes around. He needs to really keep his chest down, find the water, and then line it up. He's not going to like his 4.5s. We have Michael Ross from University of Minnesota. We have David Banucci from University of Missouri doing front 3.5 pike. Previous diver was Clark Thomas from the University of Missouri. There's a really nice entry. Wasn't quite as pounding as Nick's previously. The dive got up and down nice and straight. David's a really nice diver to watch. He gets good lines, gets in the water clean. And now we're at Michael Ross from University of Minnesota. He'll be on the 5 meter. He's doing it back 2.5 somersaults tuck.
Could have stood up just a little bit more off the start. Could have blocked it. What that means is the shoulders actually hit a point where they stop, and then the feet come up and over. Kicked a little bit low and flat. Like to see it high and tight, especially on 5 meter. Not much time or room for error on that entry. Here's Lane Rogers from Purdue, front 2.5 somersault pike from 5 meter.
Lane's got a really nice entry there in the end. Great difficulty. There's a little bit lower than what we see the other divers doing from the 5 meter platform. He's going to come away with 7.5. Now we have our 6'2" John Santino from Auburn University. Now on the platform, he's not going to have the help of the springboard to help get his body moving. The platform, it's all your muscles, all your ability. And he's throwing a pretty big list. He's doing 3.5s in every direction. Leaves that one just a little bit low, but you get a good hand on the water, nice rips down. That's going to help him with the judges. Needs to get his arms moving a little bit quicker. Get elbows up over the top when he's taking off the tower. At 6'2", you've really got to get your body moving.
Here's Josiah Purrs from Utah, front 3.5 somersault pike. Now we're going to see a lot of these in the opening round. It's standard dive for divers, just to get off, get the nerves out of, and just to start the meet off with. The judges are going to look for something that's far and above what the rest of the competition is doing. So we're going to need to see an arm throw that's a little bit early and a nice pop. Pretty decent job there. Josiah's chest actually leaned out a little bit over the platform before he threw. That's why it carried out a little bit on the punch. Connor Murphy, our Big Ten 10-meter champion this year, missed David Bedia's Big Ten record by 17 points. Interesting to see what Connor does here today. Starting off with a back arm stand, double somersault with 1.5 twists. Holds his arm stand. That's something the judges are definitely going to be looking for throughout the day. A little bit heavy on the entry for Connor. Not used to seeing that. Still a phenomenal job. Great start for him.
When they do these arm stands, there's no rule as to how long you have to hold them. You do have to show control. He definitely shows control in that. You're going to see different approaches into the arm stand, and all of these divers will do an arm stand dive of some sort during this competition.
Something that Connor does is he makes all of his dives look easy. He's very fluid, very graceful. Here's Rockhill from Arizona, front 3.5 somersault pike. Just digs it a little bit too much. Actually lined up with his chest, shot towards the gutter closest to the sprayers. He's actually going to need to aim out just a little bit farther towards his entry point and able to stop that. Here's Sean McKinney from LSU, front 3.5 somersault pike.
You see Jamie gets into the tower and he's got his arms out a little bit in front of his shoulders. It makes that dive a lot more difficult. You want to get your elbows up behind your head, behind your ears as you come to the end of the tower. Pop the hips up. Gives you more control if you're coming out of that somersault on the way up as opposed to on the way down. We're waiting for Jamie's scores to post. We'll have to wait a little longer because he just did his dive. I've got a sheet that I'm getting a little bit backtracked on. Jamie left the tower way forward, came out really early. He's going to come away with 4.5s.
Here's Danton Rogers from IU, starting off with an inward 2.5 somersault pike. Danton does a phenomenal job on the entry. Actually throws his arms and chest down just a little bit too much on that start. Could have seen a little bit more up and over direction on the start. Would have made his dive a little bit more moving faster, and he would have been able to drop it from 5 meters. Here's Will Chandler from Texas, inward 3.5 somersault tuck. So we'll be adding a flip in a different position. Now Kevin and I have a pretty bad angle. It looked a little inside edge from where we're sitting. Actually threw pretty wide and straight down towards the platform. On inwards, you want to make sure that you're throwing narrow and through the top. The narrower you throw, the more pop you get out from the platform.
Yeah, I think we both kind of jumped on that one.
Here's starting off the second round, Taylor from Stanford, front 3.5 somersault pike.
We probably have the worst angle for inwards and reverses in the entire pool.
does a pretty decent job there. Only gets his throw to his legs. Something that you need to do on your pike positions is make sure that you collapse at your waist and throw past your legs and then hug them to get in that pike position. Could have moved a little bit faster there, able to drop it from a little bit higher. Now, for those of you at home that are wondering, 10 meters is actually 32.8 feet. So it's just shy of it's a little bit more than a three-story building, actually.
Yeah.
So these guys are jumping from a little bit higher than a three-story building. Right now is Noah Garcia from Stanford. Reverse 2.5 somersault tuck. Now his kick was fine. It was at horizontal, but he should have been able to scoop it just a little bit more. Brought his toes up to his target instead of just left them at horizontal. A little bit loose in the midsection. That's why he was left it a little bit short.
You know, we started diving tower. The way we convinced ourselves it was okay is we all played football at one point or another, and we said you only have to go 10 yards to get a first down, and they do that all the time. Now, when you put that vertical, it's a whole different ball game. And we have Christian doing inward 3.5 somersault tuck. Christian does a pretty good job there on that dive. He's got his arms up nice and tight. You see a little bounce throw at the top. From here, the distance seemed pretty good. He got in the dive clean, just a little bit heavy on the entry. Can lock his arms out just a little more as he comes through the water. Waiting on Judge 4. He comes away with mostly 8.5s and 8s there at 80 points. It's a big score there.
Here's Devin Burnett from SMU. Back 2.5 somersault tuck from 5 meters. Now, you see a lot of competitors going from 5 and 7 today. Potential reason why is simply just wrist and shoulder injuries in the past or just precautionary measures from the coaches. Also, a lot of divers don't get much 10-meter experience if they come in from programs that don't have platforms. Devin came out wrong sequence. Didn't matter at all. Absolutely demolished the entry there. Just a little open with the chest and looking early with his head there. Could have seen a little bit more press on the out. Does a pretty good job with it, though. Here's Ryan Hawkins from Virginia Tech. Inward 3.5 somersault tuck from 10 meter. Oh,
Ryan does a really good job there.
That's a nice dive right there.
Like the way he jumped up over the tower. You see him coming out. He's in between the 5 and the 7.5 meter tower as he lines up. He can get a little tighter on the entry, commit to that, come out a little more, but he'll like that. To have Thomas Newbacher doing reverse 2.5 somersault tuck from Florida State University. With reverse 2.5 somersaults, you may probably going to see him kind of kick down at the water as he comes out if he gets this dive moving the way it should be.
Putting on those air brakes.
He kicked just a little bit high, but he absolutely blisters the entry. Does a great job getting into the water. Comes away 7s. If he kicked a little bit shorter there, he could have put that dive in straight up and down, and you would have seen the crowd go crazy. We have Jordan Lesser. He'll be doing inward 3.5 somersaults from the University of Minnesota. Jordan's capable of putting some good scores together on this dive. He averages about 52 points. You see him kind of fall back off the tower a little bit as he pushes. He really wants to take that first throw up over the tower, get his feet snapping through the ankles. He left that a little bit short, going to come away 65.6 points, so he won't be upset about that score.
There's Logan Schinholzer from Virginia Tech. Back arm stand, double somersault, 1.5 twist. Logan balks there. What a balk is when the diver makes an attempt to do an arm stand, and then they actually end up falling without completing the arm stand and completing the dive. So the judges will be taking 2 points off per score on this. So he's going to have a really solid dive here to be able to stay in the competition for finals.
Hey, keep in mind, Nick McCrory on the 1 meter springboard did this on his first dive as well. Had a balk and still made it into the final, so it is possible. Never give up. Does an okay job on that dive. You can tell he lost his composure a little bit with the balk. Really needs to kick down under the tower just a little bit more to get it moving. Gives him more control, but he's going to come away with 35 points there. He won't be happy with the results.
Something that Logan does is just spin and twist very fast. I don't think he quite trusted how high he still had to fall, and as a result, leaves it just a little bit long there. Here's John Fox from Kentucky, front 3.5 somersault tuck. Now we're going to look for some big entries, I guess some big rips from John throughout the day today. Chest is just a little bit open there, head's a little bit high on the look. Flat body line as he goes in. You could have seen a little bit more hollow position through the entry there. Still 6.5 7s. Not bad scores for John there, but remember, with his DD, he's going to have to see something spectacular in the 8s throughout the competition. Craig Fruitry, his teammate from Kentucky, doing a back arm stand, double somersault, 1.5 twist.
Yeah, see, Greg didn't get much kip off of the top of that dive. Held the handstand not very long. Looked like he might have been just a little bit out of control there. And he left the dive just a little bit short.
Harry Jones from Arizona State. This is the first time I've literally ever seen anybody compete this dive. Is doing a reverse 3.5 somersault pike. I didn't even see this in the London Games last year. The degree of difficulty in this dive is 3.6, which is standard for some divers going in the backwards direction. But this is an exceptionally hard dive for...
Now they've got that dive listed as tuck up on the board, but they have it listed as pike in the sheets. So...
There Harry goes.
He probably should have done a
pike. Harry gets a great extension off the platform. Very fast connection. As you can see, he spins very fast. Kick just slightly high. Didn't quite come all the way out into his target, locking it in. As a result, wash it just a little bit over. Currently right now we have Ahmad from IU. Front 2.5 somersault, 2 twists.
You know that the 307B very well could be an indicator of what's to come in finals, because they can make changes between prelims and finals.
And a little delay there from the judges' scores. Here's Ahmad currently right now on 10 meter. Once again doing a front 2.5 somersault, 2 twists. Ahmad makes that dive look super, super easy. Could have seen a little bit cleaner legs in there, a little bit crimped, crossed just a little bit. Actually, in the Olympics, you'll see legs crossed, but the divers tend to have their toes overlapping, so that looks crisp. Here's JB from Virginia from 5 meters platform, reverse 1.5 somersault tuck.
That was a very well performed reverse 1.5 somersault tuck. It's one of the lowest DD dives we're going to see in this competition. But even a reverse 1.5 tuck from the 5 meter tower is not a simple dive. You've got to show good control, good jump off the tower. We have Kyle, Virginia Tech, doing inward 2.5 somersaults tuck. This does carry a degree of difficulty of 3.1 on the 5 meter tower. And he let that one go just a little bit by. Kind of had his head down as he took off the tower, pushed his feet back a little bit, and then just held on a little longer than he needed to.
Right now we have Nick McCrory from Duke doing front 3.5 somersault tuck from 7 meter. Now Nick does 109 all the time. This is probably just playing it safe, making sure he makes his spot into finals. Again, he was an Olympian for us. Probably just saving his shoulders and knee for as long as he needs to. I can almost guarantee that's going to be another flip added to that from 10 meter tonight.
Yeah, that's a beautiful rip there. I believe the first time he beat David Bodaya here at the NCAAs, he did backs and reverses from the 5 meter platform. He was having some shoulder problems and brought his dives down to 5 meter and did them for 9s and 10s.
Here's Clark Thomas from Missouri doing a full out from 7 meter. Just for future reference, it is actually 7.5 meter in the diving world. We just don't like to say that extra half, so we just say 7. Does a pretty decent job on the connection. However, didn't get as much rotation as he wanted. Throw was a little bit weak. Didn't quite have a nice punch on the start. Came out a little bit early and a little bit loose.
Yeah, the diving world would prefer the 10 versus the 9.5.
Very true, Kevin, very true. Here's David Benuki from Missouri. Back arm stand, double somersault, 1.5 twist. Now you'll notice that some divers kick up, some press up. There's no bonus awarded to any of the divers for doing either or. You just have to show control.
David didn't keep that arm stand held for very long. He showed control going up into it, but I think if he could have got his arm stand held, pressed through it, got a little more kip, he could have got enough rotation that dive would have been vertical. He left it a little bit short.
Mikey Ross from Minnesota, reverse 2.5 somersault tuck from 7.5 meter. Chest was a little bit down on the squat. As a result, his hips had to come out to generate rotation. Ultimately, what happens is you get a whip rotation versus a spinning up rotation. On his out, shoulders led, so that's why you saw it wash over. Here's Lane Rogers from Purdue, back 2.5 somersault tuck from 5 meter. Same story, different song. Could have seen a little bit more swing, a faster, relaxed swing from the shoulders all the way through. Made sure that his fingertips led instead of his shoulders leading on that one. As a result, you saw him pull on the bottom and wash it over. John Santu from Auburn, inward 3.5 somersault tuck.
That was pretty nice.
Does a pretty decent job. Now, if you're watching at home, it's the initial presentation that the judges are watching. So you might have said, oh, that was a clean entry, but something happened afterwards. Judges didn't even see that. Yeah. They see the first initial rip. They're right down to their judges' pads, pushing in the numbers. That upjet, most of the judges didn't see that. So that was a good dive for John.
That was a very good dive.
Here's Josiah from Utah. Back 2.5 somersault, 1.5 twist from 10 meter. Just a little bit wide on his start. Pulled a little bit with that left shoulder. If you're twisting left, you got to make sure that the left arm is up and over and follows through on the chase. He started his twist a little bit early and led with shoulders. As a result, not the rotation he wanted to see, and it was a little bit hard to get in that second somersault to line it up. Connor Murphy from Indiana, front 3.5 somersault pike here.
I suspect we're going to see a nice entry out of Connor on this front 3.5.
That's one thing Connor does well here. Leaves it a little bit short, popped out with his chest. This is actually Connor's weakest dive in his list. So that's definitely not a miss, not a nail. 48 points.
Yeah, Connor averages
sufficient.
about 51 points on that dive, so he should be happy with that. And he still, even though he landed short, you still hear a great booming rip entry as it starts out.
Here's Rafael from Arizona, and we're 3.5 somersault tuck.
I like the way he got off the tower there. He had a little bit heavy entry at the bottom, had a great rip sound, judges aren't going to take much off. There's a couple eights up on the board. It's just a very solid dive from Rockhill.
Sean McKinney from LSU, same exact dive from 10 meter.
And that one you see, he kind of pushes his hips back, gets his head down early, and leaves him a little bit lower in the water. It's a little bit harder to get out of the dive, and as a result, you see him roll over and a little bit heavier entry.
Jamie Bissett from Purdue, front arm stand double somersault pike. Now this is very low degree of difficulty. If he executes this very nicely, it'll make up for it, what he lacks in DD. Something I love about Jamie is that pike. It's very sharp and tight. Left it a little bit long there. Could have checked out and used his core a little bit more.
You know, at the start of that dive, he doesn't really get much of a kip. It's an easy dive. He could kip that up a little bit and spin a little faster, and then he's going to be able to have more control when he come out earlier.
Here's Dan Rogers from IU. Back arm stand 1.5 somersault, 2 somersault. Back double somersault, 1.5 twist. Dan will definitely take that. I actually got a chance to talk to him beforehand. He said that was his biggest concern today. Not very bad at all.
So he doesn't like that one much, huh? Come away with 54 points. The average is right about 54 points, so you can be happy with that in the prelims.
Will Chandler from Texas, front 4.5 somersault from 10 meter. First one we've seen today.
Does a really good job jumping up off the tower. You see him start the somersault high, finishes it pretty well. Leaves it a little loose as he goes in the water, so you see a pretty big splash come off of the bottom.
77 points isn't too shabby.
No,
you can extend just a little bit more through the entry, through the water, instead of just stopping at the water.
I remember watching David learning that dive back quite a few years ago. He was one of the first guys in the country besides Harrison to do it, and right here in Indianapolis.
Here's Taylor from Stanford University, inward 3.5 somersault tuck.
Taylor just lets that one get past him. He's a little bit in a hurry as he comes off the tower. You see him throw head down. He squeezes really tight to get the thing moving, and it goes on by. Yeah, that front 4.5, the first time it was ever competed was here at the IUPUI Natatorium by Mark Lindsay. You see his banner hanging up here in the ceiling.
Here's Noah Garcia from Stanford on the 5 meter doing inward 2.5 somersault tuck. Again, Kevin and I have a terrible angle. That looked a little bit inside edge, a little bit tight. Could have seen a little bit more extension and push from his toes to make sure that he was up and out.
And he's got a mixed bag of scores there, everything from 4 to 6.5. Each of those judges saw something a little bit different.
Christian Ibsen from Stanford, back arm stand, double somersault, 1.5 twist. Christian's actually leading right now.
Yeah, he's not known as a platform diver, and he
might be a triple threat today.
He might be. He's going to give Nick a run for his money if he keeps this up. Not bad. A little bit slow on his somersault. I like to see him get a little bit taller in that press right before they push, get a little bit of a kip. He's slightly short, going to come away with 64 points there. He's not going to be too upset about that. He averages right around 65 to 69 points on the dive.
Devin Burnett from SMU, reverse 2.5 somersault tuck from 5. As Evan squats, his shoulders must stay on top of mid-thigh and toes and load the whole foot. As you saw, he came up a little bit on the front side of his toes, and his chest was forward. Didn't wait until his fingertips got through. As a result, he hipped it out early and was short.
Yeah, he started with his toes a little bit off the tower. I know some of the divers will do that, gives them a little security feeling, but when your shoulders are out over your toes, it takes all the pressure points away.
That was Ryan Hawkins from Virginia Tech doing a back 3.5 somersault from 10 meter. Does a pretty decent job with it. Could have seen a little bit more look on the lineup and shoot to the straight line. A little bit by on that. Tom Newbacher from Florida State, back 2.5 somersault tuck from 5.
Well, Jordan does a pretty good job staying in balance on the load. He could sink down just a little bit more, get his arms through a little bit faster. He leaves the dive short. Really needs to kick to that target, keep his core on, stretch down to the bottom of the pool. Got Logan Schinholzer from Virginia Tech with, I think I've got a sheet that's a little different than what we have on the order. Now we have Jordan doing back 2.5 somersaults tuck. And again, he got a little bit early. His arms were a little bit late coming through. Starts to lean back on the beginning of that dive. Comes out a little short. Really needs to stay over his legs, get his arms up quick, explode through the tower, kind of pushing down and in as he leaves the tower. And now Logan will be doing the reverse 3.5 from 10 meter, or back to 3.5 from 10 meters. Same dive from 10 with an extra somersault.
Absolutely gorgeous come out. Loved the kick, loved the confidence. Just a little bit heavy. Could have seen a little bit more extension through the body and tight on the front side on that lineup. Still walks away with straight 7.5s. That's a good dive for him.
Yeah, he's going to be happy there.
John Fox from Kentucky does back 2.5 somersault tuck from 5 meter. Comes out shoulders first. He didn't quite get all the way back into his tuck. Led shoulders first, so on the out, it's shoulders first. If he leads fingertips through, comes back into his connection, and gets around hollow, or gets around back on the backside, he's able to come out knees first on that come out. As a result, he came out shoulders first and was able to pull it by just a tad. Here's Greg Ferrucci, his teammate from 10 meter, front 3.5 somersault pike.
I love the entry sound. He's just absolutely crushing the bottom of that dive. A little bit forward as he leaves the dive, or the tower, leaves his feet just slightly short of vertical. He's going to come away with 8.5s and 8s. He's going to be happy.
Harry from Arizona State, back 3.5 somersault pike. Oh, Harry had a phenomenal block. Maybe slightly back with his shoulder, so it's falling back from the platform. Excellent block and connect. I think he thought he was spinning a little bit faster, and he was a little bit higher than what he was used to. Comes out a little early and loose and a little bit low, left it short. Here's Ahmad Abdul Latif from IU, back arm stand, double somersault, 1.5 twist.
Now you see him struggle with his arm stand just a little bit up at the beginning of that. You see him moving up and down, up and down. There's no real deduction for that. Once you find control, you're going to get your arms up, but he's got to get the control on the bottom of the dive as well. The longer you struggle up in the handstand, the harder the rest of that dive becomes. Comes away with 5.5s and 5s.
Ahmad a little bit loose in the legs there. Could have tightened that up a little bit more. Here's JB from Virginia doing a back 2.5 somersault tuck from 5 meter. Does a pretty decent job with it. Maybe a little more pop off the platform. Sell it on the come out just a little bit more. Here's Kyle Butts for Virginia Tech. Same dive. Kyle gets a great stand, but doesn't quite connect as fast as some of the judges would like to see, and I'm sure he would like to see this also. Didn't quite finish his push down through the platform and backwards to help his connect.
Yeah, we have Nick McCrory from Duke. He'll be doing back 2.5 somersaults from the 5 meter tower. There's no question Nick can do a very nice back 3.5 from 10 meter. He's performed that at the Olympic Games as well. But when you do back 2.5 tuck from 5 like that, there's really not that much reason to put a lot of stress on your shoulder, especially in the prelims.
Sometimes playing it safe for 9s isn't a bad plan.
Yeah. 81 points on that dive. He's going to keep straight 9s.
Here's Clark Thomas from Missouri. Front arm stand, double somersault, full twist. I don't know if you can see at home, there's a lady that's called a balk judge back on the 10 meter. Anytime a handstand is done, a balk judge must confirm to the judges that no balk has been declared or no balk was committed. Clark does a decent job. Didn't have the pop or the extension up and over that you'd like to see. Left it a little bit short there. David Benucci from Missouri, back 3.5 somersault tuck.
Wow. Wow.
David does a pretty good job here. Just a little slow to that connect, but he made up for it on the out. Just kicked exactly where he needed to. Stayed tight. Brought it all the way through. First dive today, over 90 points. Straight 9 and 9.5s. Mikey Ross from Minnesota, front 3.5 somersault pike from 10 meter. Does a great job on the entry.
Gets in the water really nice. A little bit forward as he leaves the platform. Doesn't see the pop up and over the top. Still come away with 8s, and he'll be happy with 72 points there.
You'll notice that the consistency of the divers today is a little bit different than the 1 and 3 meter, simply just because there's a lot more room for air.
There's a lot more room for air. Some of the divers have more access to the platforms. Lane just performed reverse 2.5 somersault tuck from the 7 meter. Does a pretty good job getting up and into the dive. Just lets it go slightly over. Can come away 56 points. Now we have John doing back 3.5 somersaults from 10 meter from Auburn University. And John starts out that somersault really slow, and then he starts to get into it. Now he's a tall diver, long body lines. He needs to get into that somersault a little quicker so it doesn't speed up so much on him at the bottom. Get his arms through the center, block his chest, and he can find that target to kick out at. Just kind of lets it go a little bit long.
Josiah Purrs from Utah, inward 3.5 somersault tuck. does a pretty decent job with it. Wasn't spectacular, but those are the kind of dives that are going to get you into consoles.
Yeah, kept 72 points on a dive. You're going to make it into the afternoon sessions. That could come up with a lot more of a earth-shattering rip sound. He'll pick up some points, get a little more faster spin, and he'll pick up some. But that's a very solid dive for him. We have Connor Murphy, reverse 2.5 somersaults from the 10-meter from IU.
Now, Connor's what we call a back halfer. The first half of his list is pretty decent, but he's really, really strong in the last 3 dives that he does. Yep, there it is.
That was beautiful.
Doing what Connor does best, and that's crush entries.
Comes out what I always tell my divers. I want to see you come out like a Chinese diver, and they just kick out nice body lines, look back, line it up, put it straight in the water. 4 9s, 2 8.5, 71.5 points on that reverse 2.5. That's exceptional.
Rafael from Arizona, back arm stand, double somersault, 1.5 twist.
Now, you mentioned the bulk judge previously. What is it going to, if they're up there walking around on their hands in the NCAA rules, is that considered a bulk?
You know what? I actually don't know because I'm used to USA diving rules.
If you move your hands in USA diving, it is. I don't believe it is in NCAAs. I know it hasn't been in the past, but I thought maybe you'd know that.
It's been a while since I've been an NCAA diver.
Rockhill does a pretty decent job there. Comes away 62.6.5 across the board.
Sean McKinney from LSU, front arm stand, double somersault, full twist. It almost looked like Sean was a little bit forward as arm stand in the kick out.
Yeah,
does a phenomenal job holding it, though. Little lean down the start. You'll see a mixed bag of scores right there, anywhere from a 5.5 to a 7, or a 5 rather to a 7. Jamie Bassett from Purdue, back 2.5 somersault tuck from 5 meter.
Yeah, he's just coming out in the wrong order, taking off a little bit, lean back. He really needs to get that connection up on the top so he can kick his feet up first, hit the target, then look back for the water. He's going to walk away here with 4.5s and 5. We have Danton Rogers from Indiana University from the 10 meter doing reverse 2.5 somersault tuck. Dan appeared a little hesitant there at the top. What do you think there, Chris?
Dan could have gotten a little bit more extension through the top. Definitely left a little bit short. Didn't quite get the connect he wanted. Kicked just slightly high to compensate for it and washed over just a bit.
The mistakes you see at the beginning of the dive are almost always going to be amplified at the bottom of the dive.
Here's Will Chandler from Texas, reverse 3.5 somersault tuck. Gets a pretty decent start there. Nice connect, just slightly forward. Didn't quite kick where he needed to. Kicked a little flat and low. Halfway through the competition here in 10 meters, starting off the 4th round from Stanford University, Taylor doing a reverse 2.5 somersault tuck from 10.
We have Nick McCrory leading. David Benucci is 2nd. Christian Ibsen's 3rd, with Greg Ferrucci not too far behind in 4th. It's a pretty tight competition for the top 8 spots here. Top 4 definitely moving ahead of the bottom 4 in this group. Absolutely amazing jump up off the tower, and it just is equally good entry at the bottom. He should really like what he gets. 8.5s across there. 1 7.5, 1 8. He's going to keep the 8.5, 68.85 points.
Noah Garcia from Stanford doing a back 2.5 somersault tuck from 5 meter. Now, something I haven't seen a lot of the competitors do today is hit their block. They've actually slid by it with their shoulders. Noah does a pretty decent job here, and you see a nice entry. Divers have to make sure that they're leading fingertips through and standing up. They actually push with their legs to get into this, what we call a C position, so that they're able to snap back in. I've seen a lot of guys slide shoulders past connection's a little bit loose and shoulders back. Christian Ibsen from Stanford, back 2.5 somersault pike from 5 meter. See if he can improve this dive just a little bit from warm-ups.
It's not too bad. I haven't seen too many back 2.5 pikes on the 5 meter platform in competition. He's a little bit back on his heels as he takes off, leaves the dive a little bit short. Get his arms to a little bit quicker, block his chest, lift his legs up. It'll spin better for him. He'll have more control there. He's going to be happy there. Keeps him up in the race, top of the board.
Here's Devin Burnett from SMU, inward 3.5 somersault tuck. Falling down and back just a little bit from the start. Didn't quite stay up on his toes and keep a stiff ankle for a sharp punch off the platform. He almost absorbed all of his throw into it, and as a result, threw it back just a little bit more than he would have liked to have. Here's Ryan Hawkins from Virginia Tech. Reverse 2.5 somersault tuck from 5. Correction, he's up on 10 meter. Must have changed it. Reverse 3.5 somersault tuck.
That might be why he changed
Probably
it.
why he changed it. Absolutely phenomenal extension off the platform. Pretty decent connection. Could have been a little tighter in the tuck, but absolutely reminds the judges why he's up there. Buries the entry.
Yeah, Ryan comes away with 4 9s there on that dive, 87.45 points, and vaults himself into the top position for the moment.
Tom Neubacher from Florida State. Back arm stand double somersault tuck from 5. I guess that's once again a reminder of why I need to ask for the dive sheet minutes before competition
instead of
half an
hour
yeah.
before. Yeah, mine came out this morning, and it's even worse than yours.
46.8.
Tom does a decent job here. Could have had a little bit more block in his shoulder and push through the platform from his fingertips. Here's Jordan Lesser from Minnesota on 5 meter reverse 2.5 somersault tuck. Didn't stand to the position. Hips just early. Pressed him out a little early. A little Pee Wee Herman action there. Could have seen a little bit more extension through the platform. It's almost like a vertical jump with pushing your hips at the top. As a result, comes out early and a little bit loose. Left it short. Logan Schinholzer from Virginia Tech. Reverse 3.5 somersault tuck. Still laughing about that Pee Wee Herman reference.
I am. Wonder how many people have actually seen that movie.
Just a little bit by Logan Schinholzer, probably the best stand and connection I've seen today. A little bit wide split on the tuck, kicks a little bit high, a little bit over, but he's going to walk away with straight 7s and a 1.7.5.
And we have John Fox doing an arm stand double somersault from the 10 meter tower. From University of Kentucky. And he just kind of falls off of the platform. He really does need to get a little bit of a hip action kip, drive the hips and legs up into the air, because your legs and arms are going to act somewhat like your legs and feet like your arms and hands on a standing somersault. He just let that dive fall, comes away with about 16 points. And we have Greg Ferrucci on the 5 meter doing back 2.5 somersault tuck. Goes in the water a little bit soft, but that's one of the best loads arm swings I've seen today on the back somersaults. Really gets his arms through fast, jumps up off the tower really nice and tall. He's going to come away 63 points there. A little bit more than what he averages, so he should be happy. We have Harrison Harrison Jones will be doing a arm stand front double with one twist from the 10-meter tower.
It's actually Harrison's easiest dive and doesn't quite get the stand he needs to the platform. Left it a little bit short there. Could have seen a sharper square and more of a dig from his abs, lifting the hips. Almost an uppercut feeling from the stomach on the lineup there.
Now we have a mod from Indiana University doing back 2.5 somersault tuck from the 5-meter.
Ahmad does a phenomenal job with the entry. Ahmad's not known for his entries, does a pretty decent job on the out, but got his hands stuck at noon. Led shoulders first, does a great job with it though.
JB from University of Virginia, arm stand double somersault from the 10-meter in the pike position. You see he does a much better job staying in balance. See a little bit of a hip kip. Gets the somersault moving around really nice. Lines it up, puts a good entry on it. He's going to come away with 7 and 7.5. 49.2 points.
Kyle Butts from Virginia Tech from 7-meter doing reverse 2.5 somersault tuck. Now this is done from a little bit higher than most of the rest of the guys in this competition. He's going to definitely have to sell the come out so he stops the dive.
Does a pretty good job selling this kick out. He's a little bit loose there in his shoulders as he comes down into the water. Could really stretch for the bottom of the pool a little bit more, but that's a very well done dive.
Nick McCrory from Duke, reverse 2.5 somersault tuck from 5. Now watch Nick's pop his height and his drop, his flat line into this. Oh, phenomenal
that was
dive.
a great dive. I mean, there's not much you can say about that. He got a great job, great somersault. Kicked out, just absolutely smoked the entry. He's going to come around with 9s on that, 78 points on a reverse 2.5 somersault.
That was almost textbook. I'd probably have to watch TiVo to find something wrong with it.
And since it wasn't straight 10s, we could come up with something after a few hours.
Here's Clark Thomas from Missouri, inward 2.5 somersault tuck from 5. Just a little bit back. First motion he made, you'll see, is his shoulders come behind his heels. Shoulders have to stay on top of toes to stay in balance. His push wasn't through the platform, it was a little bit away from the platform, so he left it short and low.
David Banucci from University of Missouri on 10-meter doing reverse 3.5 somersault tuck.
Now remember, David did a back 3.5 somersault for straight 9s pretty much in the third round, the round prior to this. Let's see if he can do the same exact thing, just turning it around.
He averaged 9.2 points per judge on the last dive.
Kicks just a little bit low, loses it in his midsection. On a low kick like that, you have to stay hollow on the front side with your toes continually scooping up, a scooping action up into the target, just to make sure that you get the right amount of rotation for that flat line reach through. Here's Mikey Ross from Minnesota, inward 2.5 somersault tuck from 5-meter.
Michael does a pretty good job on the tower. He could jump a little bit higher, get a little more jump throw action as he takes off the platform. He's a little bit head down, a little bit early. Leaves it just slightly
ribs
short.
Actually open up on the punch, which absorbs his punch down into the platform. If you were to brace it in his midsection, tighten his core, you could get a much higher top to that dive. Here's Lane Rogers from Purdue, inward 2.5 somersault tuck. Does a pretty decent job with it. Could have seen a little bit more up and over throw. His elbows dropped on the connect, so it wasn't as fast as he'd like to see it.
He's going to go from 6s to 8s on the dive, 66.67 points, which he'll be happy with.
Again, you'll see that in platform competition, there's more of a wide variety of scores. Some judges are looking for a lot different specifics. Here's John Santu from Auburn. doing a 307C, reverse 3.5 somersault tuck from 10. Not quite in balance on the stand. Shoulders were a little bit back. It's actually probably a good thing he pushed his hips a little early just to make sure he cleared the 10
led
meter.
a little bit with his head as he started out the dive. It was a little, from this angle, you can't see how far he is away from the tower. It was a little nerve-wracking until he got past it for me. Judges did not like that dive very well.
Josiah from Utah, front arm stand double somersault pike.
This is a relatively easy arm stand double, and it's one of the easier arm stand dives. I'd really like to see him be a little more crisp coming off the tower, get a little bit cleaner on the entry, but he does a good job with that with 7.5, 8, 57 points. Or 52 points, I'm sorry.
Almost a home pool advantage here for Connor, coming from Bloomington, just a little shy of 50 miles south. Doing a back 3.5 somersault tuck from 10 meter. Kevin, I've learned my lesson. I'm just going to hold my tongue until
Okay,
after
we're going to wait
he's
till he
done.
rips this dive before you talk about it.
There you go. Actually, talking with Connor beforehand, I was asking him if he's feeling relaxed and loose and like he's ready to have fun. Just looks at me and says, "I'm ready." So we'll see. Oh,
Yeah, he's
phenomenal,
ready.
phenomenal.
He's ready.
Fantastic job from Connor. Just slightly back on the platform. Makes up for it with his awesome entry.
For those of you that have been watching us for 3 days and hearing us talk about Connor's entries, there is Connor's entry that we've been talking about.
Yeah, known as a platform diver. There you just saw why. Here's Rockhill from Arizona. Back 2.5 somersault, 1.5 twist.
Connor could get loaded a little bit more on his leg, did his arms feel a bit quicker instead of fell back a little bit, didn't get his arms over his head as much as he would like to see. Makes that second somersault as you come out of the twist into the somersault a little more difficult. 62 points there. He'll be all right with that, but he could do better.
Here's Sean McKinney from LSU on 7, reverse 2.5 somersault tuck. Now, even though this dive's from 7 and it's a little bit easier than from 5, I'd still like to see him stand it all the way up, get a nice top, and sell to come out. Hips it out just a tad. You'll notice that he bends forward a little too much on his squat.
That's something that you see from a lot of platform divers, is especially as they're learning the dives, they just don't want to believe in the physics of the dive, and they want to move their shoulders forward, think that'll make it easier to get away from the tower. And it does, but it also makes it harder to do the dive.
Jamie Bissett from Purdue, reverse 2.5 somersault tuck from 5. Something I like about Jamie, even though he goes a little by, is his nice tight lines, his nice small tucks, and his excellent toe point.
He had a really good job staying balanced there and getting his arms up on his jump too. He just presents himself very well. We have Danton Rogers doing back 2.5 somersaults from the 5 meter.
Just comes out a little bit loose, shoulders first. Left his heels dropping instead of his toes coming up on the front side. Leaves it short for 4.5s.
We'll see Will Chandler, University of Texas at Austin, on the 10 meter doing a back 3.5 somersault tuck. He's going to add a somersault and a level from what Danton just did. He had an absolutely beautiful load, got his arms up, waited on his legs till he was ready to explode. Jumped up into the air, got somersault moving good. See him kick out, floated around just a little bit short at the end. Comes away with 8.5. He'll like that, 77.5 points.
Starting the 5th round here in Indianapolis, Taylor from Stanford University, back 2.5 somersault tuck from 5 meter. I liked the pop off the platform, just a little bit delayed in his connect. Could have seen a quicker connect off the platform, which would have given him a much more time to drop it. Tell the judges he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he jumps off the tower very nicely. You know, this is the point last night in the finals that we saw Nick and Christian kind of going back and forth and missing dives here and there. You're never out of it. We've got 2 rounds to go. These divers that are in the consolation spot still have a chance to move into the finals. And those that are fighting for that consolation place, they're going to have a chance to get there too.
That was Noah Garcia from Stanford. Back 2.5 somersault, 1.5 twist. Does a great job on the entry. Pretty decent top. He's going to walk away with 68.8 points. Not a bad dive at all today. It's Christian Ibsen from Stanford. Reverse 2.5 somersault tuck from 5. Christian does a decent job on his start. Could have seen a little bit more fingertip lead. However, he doesn't shoot all the way through with his hands on the entry. He gets a little bit short on the front side, so he catches the forearm area of his arm. It gets a little bit heavy of a splash.
We have Devin Burnett from Southern Methodist University doing back 2.5 somersaults, 2.5 twist from the 10 meter.
This is one of the hardest dives you're going to see today. Now, as a judge, I see him fidgeting just a little bit. I want to see a little bit more confidence as you stand up there. Really let me know you know exactly what you're doing. Does a pretty decent job. Doesn't get that extension that I'd like to look off on the platform. A little bit whippy. Doesn't quite get his hips all the way around on that square. As a result, it's a little bit short and a little bit cockeyed. Walks away with 5.5s.
Ryan Hawkins for Virginia Tech doing arm stand back 2 somersaults with 1.5 twists free. Now, the way you present yourself to the judges is very important. Stand up there and look like you don't know what you're doing. They're going to second guess sometimes what they see in the air and not always give you the benefit of the doubt. Now, Ryan struggled there to get his arm stand up and hold it, but once he started off the tower, he did an excellent job getting that dive around to get into the water. He showed control going into the arm stand, but it didn't look like he pressed all the way into it. Got a couple judges that probably saw that as well. 3 6s and a low of 3.5, 54.4.
Tom Newbacher from Florida State, inward 3.5 somersault tuck from the top. I loved it. I loved it. Absolutely great extension and pop from his ankles. His direction of his throw could have been a little different, though. Up and over, long and strong. Dropped his elbows just a tad. Might have been a little bit inside edge. Does a pretty decent job on the entry, maybe a little short.
We have Jordan Lesser at the University of Minnesota. He's doing an arm stand back 2 somersaults with 1.5 twist from the 10 meter. Jordan shows nice control press up on the arm stand. You see him get nice and tight and stretch before he starts. He needs a little bit more kip and push down underneath the tower with his legs. Get the somersault moving a little more so he can go vertical. He leaves that one quite short. Mechanics of the dive look pretty nice though. 36.8.
Logan Schinholzer here from Virginia Tech doing inward 3.5 somersault tuck. Oh,
That was
phenomenal
beautiful. Now,
job.
Logan came into this round in 10th position, and that could very well move him into a position to make a run at the finals. Couple of 9s, 3 8.5s. That's a very well done dive at 81.6.
Any dive over 75 today is considered a hit.
We have John Fox on the 10 meter, back 2.5 somersaults, 1.5 twist in the pike position. He's from the University of Kentucky.
John Fox a little bit too deep in the squat, but that's not what concerned me. What concerned me was his chest was a little forward and his butt was a little back. So to actually put him out of rhythm from the platform, I know the platform doesn't move, but believe it or not, as you push into it, it actually pushes back into you. So it's almost like a springboard in that regard. A little bit out of balance on his squat, so he leaned it back on the start.
Greg Ferrucci from Kentucky doing a reverse 2.5 somersault tuck from the 5 meter. Greg does a very nice job getting his arms up over his head. He's just slightly forward on his chest as he starts into his squat, finds the out, lines it up, gets a good entry. Come away with 67.5 points there, a couple of 8s, 3 7.5s. And Harrison from the 10 meter will be performing a 109C front 4.5 somersault tuck. He can spin very fast, gets a good jump off the tower usually. The question will be whether he can get it into the water.
Harry had an awesome pop, maybe slightly forward with his chest. It carried into his top, just a little bit by on the bottom.
And come away with 70.3 points there.
Ahmad from IU, reverse 2.5 somersault tuck from 7.5. Ahmad just hips it a little early on takeoff, and as a result gets loose and pulls on his out. Now the sequence for every single dive, whether it's reverse or back, has to be hollow on the front side, kick first, then look, then shoot.
JB from the 5, just an inward 2.5 somersault tuck. Got that into the water really nicely. Keep his head up, throw up over the top a little bit more on the takeoff, have a little more control. He's going to come away with 51.15 points.
You'll see that even with the entry on some dives, it can't fully distract from the takeoffs and the tops that these judges are looking at.
The entry will help you forget some of the things that you saw at the top, but it really is only worth a couple of points. We have Kyle from Virginia Tech on the 10-meter arm stand front somersault pike, or double somersault pike, I'm sorry. He shows pretty good control there as he gets ready to start. You see a good kip as he throws his arms through. He kind of stops at the legs, doesn't spin quite as fast as he could, leaves him a little bit harder to line it up at the bottom. Comes away 43.2 points. We have Nick McCrory. We do an arm stand back double somersault 1.5 twist free from the 10-meter. As expected, Nick is leading this competition coming into this round. A bronze medalist in synchro with David Bodaya at the 2012 Olympics. That was absolutely brilliant.
Kevin, did you see where he went?
I did not.
Did you see? I think he went through that little white thing down there.
I now see him coming up on the stairs. There's a little white hole there. He goes 9.5, 9.9, 9.5, 8.5, 9, 8. Beautiful dive by Nick. Total score of 86.4. Yeah, there's just a little white dot. I think he found his way through. We have Clark Thomas, University of Missouri, doing back 2.5 somersaults from the 5. Again, you see his come-out sequence is looking back first, kind of kicking legs at the same time. You really want to kick your feet out, find your target, look for the water. Once you find the water, you can put your hands on it. got to get your arms through the top. He's going to come away with 6s, 5.5s, or 52.5 points.
David Benucci from Missouri, inward 3.5 somersault tuck. David's been putting together a pretty solid list today.
David comes into the round in 6th position.
Just lines it up a little bit short. A little bit short with the body, not with the reach. Could have dug it just a little bit more. Got the hips up so he was able to drop it into a nice position. Walks away with 6, 6.5.
He got in the water nice and clean. He just finished the entry, get his legs up high. He could go a couple more points from the judges there. Michael Ross from the University of Minnesota, back 2.5 somersault, 1.5 twist from the 10-meter. Michael's currently in 18th position, looking for a spot in the consolations. Lets this dive go just a little bit over as he's coming around for his twist, digs his head down a little bit much. He can stay squatted on his legs, get his arms up quick, and explode off the tower. He'll have more control. The higher they jump, the more control they're usually going to have. Comes away with 57.6 points.
Here's Lane Rogers from Purdue, back 2.5 twister from 5 meter. Now he's going to have to hit a nice block on this one. Pretty decent job there. Hold shoulders just a tad. Leaves it a little bit by and maybe a little bit unsquare. We can't really tell from this angle.
He does a good job putting his hands on the water and getting it clean. 56.5 points.
John Santiu from Auburn, front arm stand, double somersault, full twist. Really nice press right here. A lot of control. Could have seen a little more pop instead of whip off the top. Slightly heavy on the bottom. Overall, pretty good dive.
Yeah, sounded good on the entry. He's got a low of 5.5, high 7. 60.45. John's done a really good job this weekend. We have Joshua Purse from Utah. Back 2.5 somersault tuck from the 5 meter. Joshua leaves that dive quite short. A little bit slow getting the somersault connection. Rotates a little bit slow. Comes away with 3.5s.
Connor Murphy from Indiana, inward 3.5 somersault tuck.
Connor seems to have quite the following here this morning.
It's because half of them know what he can do. Looks like the majority of the IU team stuck around to cheer on their teammate.
A lot of candy cane striped pants.
There you go. Connor does an exceptional job here. Maybe just slightly down and in on his throw with his chest, which as the result was a little by on the bottom.
Yeah, Connor does a really good job disguising how far over that dive went by putting such a nice rip entry on the bottom of it. He's going to go 6.5 to 8 there, 70.4 points. Puts him in third.
Quintero here from Arizona, back 3.5 somersault tuck.
Beautiful dive.
Loved the start. I love the start. Sells it with an awesome kick, and the entry speaks for itself.
Absolutely stunning dive. Got a couple of 9s, some 8.5s, 82.5 points there. Dive takes him from 8th to 6th at the moment.
I personally think he got a little underscored there.
I believe
some of the
he does.
judges. They gave him 8s. Not that I'm supposed to speak against the judges. They're the know-all, say-all, but...
Well, we're at the right angle to see what they should have done. They're at the wrong angle.
Sean McKinney from LSU, back 2.5 somersault tuck.
Go ahead.
A lot of these divers today are sitting back in a chair. On diving, you want to squat on balance on the platform on the bottom as your fingertips are coming through on that swing. You want to get a tip on the stand. A lot of these divers are squatting back like they're sitting in a chair, doing a squat in the weight room, popping the butt back. As a result, they're falling backwards and not in sync or in balance. Jamie Bissett from Purdue, inward 3.5 somersault tuck.
Jamie does a good job on the start there. He's got his head ducked just a little bit as he's coming out. Possibly just a little bit to the right on the throw. He's going to come away 72 points, so he'll be happy with 72 points there. I like the way he attacks the top with a nice jump throw, fingers up over the top.
Dan Rogers from IU, front 3.5 somersault pike. Dan does a pretty decent job on the start. Excellent timing with his arms and legs, maybe a little bit bent over. That's why it was a little cut off on the top, slightly by on the bottom. Pretty decent entry.
Will Chandler, University of Texas at Austin, is doing the arm stand back 3 somersaults tuck.
I haven't seen this in a while, Kevin. This is probably because it's one of the hardest 3.3s you can do on the top on the 10 meter. The margin of error in the funnel in which you have to enter the water in is much smaller.
He doesn't seem to have much problem.
I see why he does it. Slightly long, just simply because he pulls shoulders. That was a pretty decent dive. Yeah, he'll be happy with 79. That's a hit for sure.
Will's had a couple good dives here in a row.
Starting the 6th and final round, Taylor from Stanford University. You know what, Kevin? I'm going to do it. I'm going to take a stab at his last name. I haven't said it all weekend. I want to say Taylor Sischk from Stanford. Back 2.5 somersault, 1.5 twist. I'm sure I'll hear about that one later.
I can agree with you, and we could both be wrong.
Great start, great top. Doesn't quite get around and get a second good throw in.
He looked as he's lining up like he thought he was a little bit further around, didn't really dig down and get the legs up there. He came into the round in 7th and moved into 5th at the moment, so we'll see if he can I'm sorry, that was Will, who is currently in 5th. Taylor came in at 11th and moved into 5th, so we'll see if that isn't enough to keep him up into the consolations.
Here's his teammate Noah doing a front arm stand double somersault pike.
That's probably one of the best arm stand front doubles that we've seen today, is the way he had nice and controlled. He came around the top, and he's got enough time to look for the water and get it in. It's a fairly simple dive. You really need to impress the judges if you want to get the high scores from him. He does a pretty good job there. He's gotten 7.5s across the board, 54 points. It's a pretty solid dive there for the arm stands.
Kevin, it took me 6 rounds to see this, but another Stanford University diver. First three divers Stanford. It's Christian Ibsen doing a back 2.5, 2.5. Christian's known for his twisting. Does a solid job here. A little bit of a crimp in that square. Something that's not uncommon in his diving, but definitely something that's going to take off a little bit from the judges if they saw it.
You're actually in the air looking at those divers quite a while from the 10 meters, so if you got a little crimp, they're going to find it. Judges will see it. Christian does a nice job there.
Devin Burnett from SMU, back arm stand, 2.5 twist, 2 somersaults. I believe the first one we've seen today. Really quick on the press, showing his strength here. Little bobble. It's actually going to count as a balk. Makes up for the, doesn't lose concentration, doesn't lose focus. That was actually a nicely executed dive considering.
Does a really, really good job there.
For those of you watching at home, remember 2 points will be deducted from every judge's score. most certainly hope he wasn't on the bubble.
54, even. Ryan, 52-53.
Ryan Hawkins, Virginia Tech. Back 2.5, 1.5 twist. Ryan's doing a solid job today. Makes it look too easy, too easy. In fact,
he has so
goes
much
over.
time. He's just tighten his body up a little bit more. The one thing I see about Ryan is his dive looks loose, which allows it to go a little bit over. But yeah, he does a great job there. 73 points. For a moment, puts him up into the lead. We'll see if he can maintain that. I don't suspect he will, but he should stay a solid third or fourth here.
Tom Neubacher from Florida State on 5 meter, back 1.5, 1.5.
Thomas came in the 10th position, kind of in the middle of the constellations. This dive, 50 points. It's going to put him right there on the bubble, I suspect. He may be able to stay in there with that. We'll see what the divers behind him come up with. It's pretty well executed, back 1.5, 1.5. And we have Jordan Lesser from University of Minnesota from 10 meter, back 2.5 somersault, 1.5 twist pike. Jordan seems to be a little crooked there on the takeoff. He's a little bit loose as he somersaults around, lets the dive kind of wash over. Does a pretty good job on his jump. Decent position in the twist. Can come away with 6.5s across at 62.4 points. It's a pretty solid overall effort there on the dive.
Logan Schinholzer from Virginia Tech, back 2.5, 1.5 twist. Same dive. Hopefully Logan on this one can make sure that he gets a solid check. Moves his body first, then arms last to stop the dive.
Now you did see all of those motions and movements that you spoke of, just didn't quite get the somersault moving at the top, left a little bit short. We have John Fox, University of Kentucky, inward 3.5 somersault tuck, 3.2 here. This is second UK diver in a row.
I wish it was a 4.5.
Yeah, that would be
from John.
awesome
That'd be
from
super
John.
Impressive. Through just a little diagonally on that start, a little bit to the left. I don't know if you can see it at home. A little crooked on that.
56, even. Brooke, 407C, happy 2.
His teammate Greg Ferrucci from University of Kentucky doing the same dive, inward 3.5 somersault tuck. Greg comes in the 4th position. He's had a really solid afternoon of diving here on the platform.
Almost a little too perfect on the start and connect. Didn't quite know what to do with it. Sky high, moving super fast. Little second guess on that come out. Cost him the entry because he guessed it too much.
Yes, he did. He got a nice and tight come out, nice pike out there. He's probably going to stay there in the 4th place position going into the finals. We have Harrison Jones back 2.5, 2.5.
Harry making a 3.6 look like a 3.0.
73.8.
A little bit heavy. Pretty decent job from Harry. Ahmad from Indiana, inward 3.5 somersault tuck.
Ahmad got that started really, really nicely. Very high up in the air as he pikes out, looks for the water. Just a little bit heavy as he goes in the water. He's going to come away with 70.4 points. It's a very well done dive there for Ahmad.
I would have liked to have seen a little bit more throw up and over the top. A I don't think I've ever seen a pike out on inward 3.5 at the ceiling. The fact that he even made that in vertical is impressive. JB from Virginia, front 3.5 somersault pike. For how far forward his chest was on that takeoff, he had an excellent connection and a very nice top. Doesn't quite check on the come out, doesn't quite get his body arms out on the line, leaves it a little bit long. Here's Kyle Butts from Virginia Tech, back 2.5 somersault, 1.5 twist.
Kyle gets a little bit off kilter there as he's into the twist. You see the twist kind of wobbling on him, and he needs to be able to stay up on balance when he gets into the connection for the first throw through. It's going to go away with 4.5, 5.5, 50 points there. You see Nick McCrory on the 7-meter doing inward 3.5 somersault tuck.
Nick normally does this dive from 10, but I think he's doing all the right things here. He's actually prepping this for inward 4.5 tuck, which you might see tonight. Can't promise you guys anything. Finishes at 3 meters still, a little bit back with the hips.
He finishes at inward 3.5 off 7 as high as a lot of these divers have been doing the inward 3.5 on 10 meter. Comes away 76.5 points. You can't argue with what he's done here today.
Clark Thomas will finish up prelims with a reverse 2.5 somersault tuck from 5. Clark maybe pulling shoulders a little bit too far back, a little bit inside edge. Actually might have been, in fact, a little bit tight. Judges didn't seem to mind. Slightly by on the bottom. David Banucci back 2.5 from the top. David does a pretty good job here. Slightly back with his shoulders, could have hit the block a little bit more. Would have made it a little bit easier to get into that second throw. Still does a great job for 77 points. Mikey Ross from Minnesota, 616B front triple pike from an arm stand. Haven't seen this done in a while. Nice, decent start to it. Doesn't quite get the come out he needs. He comes out chin and chest first, popping him out. Ultimately completely stops his rotation. What he had to do was keep the hollow position in the chest, lift the hips, lift the legs for the entry, and then line it up with his arms. Here's Elaine Rogers from Purdue. 614B, front arm stands, double somersault from 7.
Does a very decent job there. You see a nice tight body line, good kip off the tower. Lines the dive up, puts a clean entry on it. Should be happy with the way that dive went into the water for him. It's going to come away with 8, 7.5, 7s, 50.6 points for Lane. That's the best he's done on that dive so far in competition.
Sean Santiu from Auburn, back 2.5 somersault, 1.5 twist from 10 meter. Now, if you're familiar with diving, you're watching from home, and some of these guys look a little bit flat today. Keep in mind, this is their third day in a row of competition. That includes all warm-ups, all prelims, and everything.
That's a great way to finish this preliminary for John. Gets a nice jump off the tower, lines that dive up. Good, nice rip entry on that. 72 points on the dive. That may not be quite enough to keep him in competition in the consoles, but that's very nice finish to his day.
Josiah Purrs from Utah, reverse 2.5 somersault tuck from 5. A little too whippy, wide with his throw, with his fingertips and elbows, pulled shoulders back, got that shoulder start that we don't want to see on reverse. As a result, goes a little bit long. Connor Murphy from Indiana, back 2.5 somersault, 1.5 twist. I want to say something so badly right now, Kevin, but I want to hold my tongue.
It's Easter weekend.
Doesn't quite do it how I've seen him do it over and over and over again down there in Bloomington. Still good enough to get him a spot in the finals.
Yeah, you'll be able to see those entries that we know we can do when he gets the cameras on him this afternoon.
I've seen Connor hit that dive on more than one occasion for straight 10s. It's probably one of his best dives. Here's Rockhill from Arizona, reverse 3.5 somersault tuck. Oh, that is the best entry of the day. That was fantastic. Pretty decent start. Not quite the connection that I'm sure he's used to. Get some 10s on it. Get some 10s on
3
it.
10s, 4 9.5s. Absolutely incredible.
Job on the entry.
I believe those may be the first 10s we've seen all weekend. The dive was well deserving of that.
Here's Sean McKinney from LSU, back 2.5 somersault, 1.5 twist. A little bit over on the twist, not quite square at the hip, doesn't tee it out for that second throw. Judges see it a little bit there with some 5.5s. Jamie Bissett from Purdue from 10, back 2.5 somersault, 1.5 twist.
It's a well-executed back 2.5 twister. Needs to finish the dive a little bit more vertical, reach to the top on the takeoff. It's going to weigh 67.2 points.
Dan Rogers from Indiana, back 2.5 somersault, 1.5 twist for the third time in a row. Pretty decent job there. Led with his shoulders, so it was a little slow. Didn't quite finish his push through.
You know, the back 2.5 twister, or back 2.5, 1.5 we saw from John, vaulted him from 22nd position up into 12th at the time, and he is going to hold on for the consolation final, so we'll get to see him again. Kind of goes to show you just never give up. That last dive always puts you over the top.
Will Chandler from Texas to finish off the preliminary event, back 2.5, 2.5. A little bit tight, Hit it in on the start instead of standing it up through the platform. See if the judges pick up on that.
50.4.
This concludes the preliminary event. Kevin and I will be back on shortly to bring you consoles.